Good evening, this is David Anderson, and this is David and David and Gene and Roger, a Siskel and Ebert podcast. With me, as always, is Mr. David Lawler. How are you doing, Mr. Lawler?
I'm fine. We had some Mexican. I did a little too much drinking earlier in the day, but I'm fine. How are you?
You're just a little drunk.
No, well, I'm in a state of, I just got up from like a little nap because I drank too much, so...
Well, he's a little cranky. Like, maybe I need to burp him a little, maybe.
Now I'm thinking about all the bills I have to pay,
Oh, no. Well...
The time leading up to the drinking is fun time, and then afterwards, when you wake up, then you start thinking about, oh, shit, I've got to pay bills and do shopping.
So were you at all distraught about these movies from 1985 that we're about to talk about? And Siskel?
No, as a matter of fact, actually, all these movies that they talk about on this episode are movies that I really, really liked a lot, including Goodbye New York. So
interesting, because there's a bunch of these that I haven't seen. I mean, I have not seen. So I guess I'll say what they're going to review. They're going to review Perfect with John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis, View to a Kill with, of course, Roger Moore. Goodbye New York, and then there's what else did they do in there?
Fletch.
And of course, and Fletch. Yeah.
Fletch, bit by bit, one way or another, bit by bit, running undercover. Have you heard the news coming through the break night?
What do they review
Pressure's
first?
Working overtime.
Ow! What do they review
bit
first?
By bit,
what do they review first?
One way or another. We're doing bit by bit, one way or another first.
Okay.
Fletch, 1985 American action comedy directed by Michael Ritchie, written by Andrew Bergman, and loosely based on Gregory MacDonald's popular Fletch novels, which I have a few of those books. Very, very good, very fun, funny books about an investigative journalist who goes under the byline of Gene Doe, Irwin M. Fletcher, played by Chevy Chase.
Yes. And are we gonna go into like their review, or are we gonna talk about like what they thought of it? Because
okay, well, it's basically you have Chevy Chase playing Irwin M. Fletcher, who is offered a bunch of money by Tim Matheson to kill him because Tim Matheson tells him the story about how he has bone cancer, and as it turns out, there's a big drug operation going on the beach, and he's been pretending to be like a junkie on the beach to get a story about how all the drugs are coming in. And the way they're coming in is, it turns out to be related to the Tim Matheson character, working together with Joe Don Baker to transport drugs into Los Angeles and probably the rest of the country from there. So it all sort of ties together that way. It looks like something that could have been a very straightforward kind of action movie, but with Chevy Chase in it, becomes a comedy.
Fletch was a big surprise for me, a delightful surprise, in fact, because it stars one of my least favorite actors, comedian Chevy Chase, who too often really just winks at the camera and says, in effect, "Aren't I funny?" Not here, though, because his character Fletch, an investigative newspaper reporter, finds himself up to his elbows in a drug-dealing story where one of the culprits has just asked Fletch, believe it or not, to murder him in exchange for money.
Why don't you try suicide? Believe me, I've thought about it. But my company's taken out a very large life insurance policy on me. Suicide would nullify my insurance. But murder does not. Why me? You're a drifter, pardon the expression, a junkie. Nobody would notice if you just disappeared. You see, I've been watching you for a couple of weeks.
Maybe I'm just on vacation.
Not with the scum you hang out with, no. No, I've watched, and I've thought. It's rather an elegant little plan. I even have your escape figured out for you.
Yeah, and they kind of mentioned it, like the music, the Harold Faltermeyer music,
yes,
and how it has a very Beverly Hills Cop feel to it. And I would agree, and this almost has the look of something, because this came out like, about 6 months after Beverly Hills Cop.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking they saw Beverly Hills Cop and were like, we need to go back in and change a few things and tweak a few things to make it more Beverly Hills Cop-like, and have
it is. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of high speed.
So who knows?
Chases.
It may have been funnier, or it may have been more of an action movie. Like, I can't tell. Like what they tried to make it as Murphonic and as Murphesque as they could.
This is this is a movie that I would not like if it wasn't for Chevy Chase. I disagree with Gene Siskel. Gene Siskel says that Chevy Chase is one of his least favorite actors, even though he liked the movie. Both of them question Chevy Chase's authenticity as an actor, and I think he does a fine job in this movie.
Like,
This is
yeah,
what
I
really.
like it.
This is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It's probably up there in my top 5 as far as comedies go.
I feel like it was an uneven blend where you have the Chevy Chase moments that I think everybody thinks is funny. It's, you know, Ryan Reynolds is doing it now. As far as I'm
Oh
concerned.
no!
He's kind of got that. But anyway, we can have a conversation.
Why can't we just leave this shit alone? Why can't we just watch these movies and do we have to have a fucking remake of everything? God.
But okay, so
Jesus, it's just like Ghostbusters. I mean, they nearly destroyed Ghostbusters with that stupid movie
it's a
they
whole
did.
other show. But
And these are like, you know, this was when the SNL, the Saturday Night Live primetime players were dominating the box office. You know, you had Vacation, you had Stripes, you had Ghostbusters, you had Fletch, and these were the most popular box office draws of their time.
Chevy Chase was very much the pioneer of I'm smarter than everyone else, and I'm gonna just be funny, and I'm gonna be smarter than everyone else. And this is he wears a lot of costumes.
Oh,
and
yeah,
wigs
he's
and
great.
This
He's goofy
various
in this.
things, which he would then I think do in Fletch Lives as well.
Fletch Lives, a funny movie, but not nearly as good as the first one.
Well, see, I would disagree because I think that in this movie it was his bits are funny, the comedy bits are funny, but then every time it slows down to like be some sort of like thriller, it doesn't necessarily work for me. It's been a while since I've seen it. I may have to
There's more of a story here.
I may
There's
have
more
to
of a
watch
story.
it
Fletch
again.
Lives is just basically, okay, we've got Chevy Chase. It's based on the character. It's not based on anything Gregory McDonald wrote. So Fletch is more story-driven than it is concerned with Chevy Chase's performance, whereas Fletch Lives is just all Chase all the time.
That's probably why I liked it more. I like if you're going to do a comedy, do a comedy. If you're doing action comedy, is kind of.
I mean, I
hard
thought
to do.
his costumes in the first movie and his various personae were much funnier to me than in Fletch Lives. But I have both.
And he also
I
come up
watched
with
them.
weird names too, like I'm Igor Stravinsky.
Yes, this is Igor Stravinsky. You know, but
I would.
they were both kind of split on Chevy Chase, but they enjoyed the story. They liked the movie.
Yeah.
And Dana Wheeler-Nicholson is really hot in the movie, and so is Gina Davis, by the way.
Oh yeah, she's
Who's also in it.
yeah. It's been a while since I've seen it. I'd probably have to see it.
You know what's funny? Okay, Fletch, I want to bring up another movie that came out years later called Hero, with Gina Davis as the star.
I remember that movie. I felt.
And Chevy Chase has a bit part in it, and he's uncredited. So it's like Chevy Chase was the star of Fletch, Gina Davis was a nobody in 1985 and was in this, and then now Gina Davis was a somebody in Hero, and Chevy Chase was a nobody.
Yeah, would he have made that movie before or after that very failed Fox show that he did?
Oh, it had to have been during the time. It had to have been because he did. I don't know. For some reason, he was on top of the world for 1 year, where he made Memoirs of an Invisible Man with John Carpenter for Warner Brothers, and then he became the host of the Late Night Show, and then that canceled. So I think it might have been like slightly after that or something. He was like persona non grata for.
See,
a while.
that's a movie where his talent is wasted, where he does try to be the action star. Memoirs of an Invisible Man. It's like, and it's John Carpenter kind of. It's like anybody could have made that movie. It's got
I know.
moments,
It's not
but
a Carpenter movie. It's not a John Carpenter movie.
It's not a John Carpenter movie. It's not a Chevy Chase movie.
One of the great filmmakers of all time, but still not a John Carpenter movie. He would get Sam Neill, the bad guy from that, to be his protagonist
it's more of a Sam Neill movie than anything.
for In the Mouth of Madness, which was a John Carpenter movie.
Which is another one. That is a John Carpenter movie that makes no sense.
So we move on to A View to a Kill.
Yes.
The 14th James Bond movie to be produced by EM Productions, and the last one to star Roger Moore.
Yeah.
And it's adapted from Ian Fleming's short story From A View to a Kill.
Yes.
But it has an entirely original screenplay because
the entire original
From A View to
screenplay
a
that
Kill
is
had
half
nothing
of
to
the-
do with
it's an entire
it had nothing to do with Silicon Valley.
Well, it's an entirely original screenplay that has like half of the plot of Goldfinger.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, like he's got like the same thing. The table comes up. Here's my evil plan. Oh, you don't want it? Well, here, go. Here's this door. Ah!
See, I go okay. Now, I guess they didn't like it, right?
No, they didn't for different reasons. But and it had to do with Siskel had it in for Roger Moore.
He doesn't buy him as James Bond,
Even though he liked Octopussy, which is probably the most Roger Moore. I would say the most Roger Moore of all of them. He is just in full Roger Moore in that one, and he liked that.
You know what? I really like Octopussy. I think I like Octopussy more than A View to a Kill, even though I really love Tanya Roberts in this movie. My God, she was hot. She was. Remember when she was the shit? You remember when Tanya Roberts was? Oh my God, she was like.
Well, she was
in Beastmaster.
Beastmaster,
right?
then
she was
Sheena.
in Sheena, And this, and she was also a Charlie's Angel, too, very briefly at the end of that show's run. One of the most beautiful women to grace television and movies, and apparently, by all accounts, really, really difficult to work with. But
most hot women are.
But Ebert says the movie has good moments, but the whole movie overall was a disappointment. Like I said, Siskel didn't like Roger Moore. He's like used to Sean or something like that. I mean, my mother felt the same way growing up watching Sean Connery movies, right? We grew up, the both of us, our generation grew up watching Roger Moore.
Yeah, and
he was our generation's James
Bond. I've come
Bond.
around on Roger Moore where I poo-pooed him.
I like Roger Moore.
And then
he looks great in a tux.
Now that's a pretty good shot. It does look like she's really hanging over the Golden Gate Bridge there, although some of the earlier shots in that sequence
very fakey.
Pretty fake.
Yeah.
There are a lot of spectacular stunts in this movie. We also see Grace Jones, or her double, parachute off the Eiffel Tower. We see Bond penetrate the innards of the San Andreas Fault. He goes down in a mine and tries to
Looks
deal
like
with
Indiana Jones.
There's a lot of action, but it doesn't add up to much in this movie because the film hasn't really taken the time to get us interested in Christopher Walken's bizarre schemes, let alone make him believable. The movie has some good moments. It has some good stunts, including that breakaway car. Look at you. I can't wait to tell me about that car. I thought that the car was okay, but I thought the movie was a disappointment, and now Gina's going to tell you why the car wasn't any good either, right?
Well, the car's better than Roger Moore. Let's put it that way. That's my problem. I keep coming back to this. Roger Moore, for me, has never worked as James Bond, never will. It's Sean Connery's act. A rule in show business, don't do somebody else's act. He doesn't take the film seriously. If he isn't seriously scared, if he has his light comic approach, that's what he always says in interviews, well, I say then we don't feel in jeopardy for him. I mean, I want it, just what you said at the top, I want a James Bond villain that can knock Bond off. We used to believe years ago that Bond, actually, this might be the last one. Here, you never know. He waltzes through the
Well, you're
thing.
right about that, and that Sean Connery always did seem to believe or to project that he really was in danger, that he might really get killed.
Yes.
Remember that laser beam?
The best.
Says, what do you want me to do? Talk? No, I expect you to die. You know, lines like that, and we thought it might happen too. With Moore, it is more of a light comedy
It's a lot,
approach.
and it doesn't work. And Christopher Walken is not a credible villain. I have another problem with him. I don't think he's as good as you do. In that scene there, he's having a light time. Christopher Walken is one of the sweet, most heartfelt actors. We saw that in The Deer Hunter. I do not believe him here.
No, look at him in Dead Zone. Christopher Walken
wasn't a bad guy.
He can be a bad guy, and he could have been a better bad guy if they'd had more for him to say, more for him to do.
More for him to do. That's right. Destroy the world. Why, Silicon Valley, people are jealous of all the billionaires in Silicon Valley. If that blows up, I don't care. I'm jealous of those computer whiz kids.
Okay,
Let them get knocked off.
Everyone in Silicon Valley is happy to have your opinion on that.
And then I did in anticipation of the in 2015 in anticipation of Spectre, I did a once a week. I started in May because I had like 22 some movies, I think. So every week I would watch like the Blu-ray, and then I'd watch all the extras and everything. So by the time I got to the Roger Moores, I watched them, and I think maybe it benefited from they had audio commentary of Roger Moore talking about the movies.
Oh wow!
More newly recorded ones, and like he didn't remember, and he'd say like, no, just think of this as a conversation. And
okay, that's fucking awesome though. But was he like he was doing the full like Roger Moore voice and everything?
Yes.
It's like welcome to this DVD commentary.
And I
am Roger Moore.
Yes, and I had kidney stones, and it was quite painful. You know.
I remember I had to use the bathroom right before the director yelled action. Yeah. So I pissed all over the film stuff.
Yes, I was sweating.
And then I said, may I please use the bathroom?
When I was sweating all over, and they had to come over with makeup. And yeah, so it's stuff like that.
My brother-in-law is a huge fan of the show that he did, The Saint.
Yes.
And he bought like the complete collection on DVD, and we were watching him one night when he was visiting us in New York. And it's just, Roger Moore, he has a quality about him. Yeah. I don't know what it is. He belongs up on screen.
But I came around on him when I like watched, these, as much as I poo-pooed them, it's James Bond just evolves, and it's different, and you have different phases of James Bondness where it's like, oh, we're gonna be fun for a while, and then we're gonna get serious. We're gonna go into the Dalton years where some love them, some don't. I think that they're fine. I think that it's more like Dalton needed that third movie to fully seal the deal.
Yeah.
Much like Roger Moore did, really, because
well, they thought actually Roger Moore thought he was going to be in the next movie. Apparently, he was because he wanted to retire after Octopussy, and then they called him back. Please do another one. Here's more money. And he said, you know what, I kind of like this. So he was like Nimoy, after killing him as Spock in the Wrath of Khan.
He was 57. He knew. He was like,
oh sure, he was. Yeah, he was too old, but still. I mean, I don't say anything.
I mean, he's no Pierce Brosnan.
I'm going to keep my voice really.
Pierce Brosnan is like what in his 60s. He could come back and do one more now. I mean, he's not.
Well, I'm going to keep my voice really low when I say I really didn't like Timothy Dalton as James Bond.
Oh no!
I say that, but right now my wife is in the other room and she'll kill me if she hears me. But
I gotta do a Sean Connery on that one. That's for blasphemy.
Sometimes you got to give your filly a slap, a little slap on the ass.
That's for blasphemy.
Okay, I want to get into their problems. Now, their problems were great villains make great Bond movies, and the villains aren't given enough to do in A View to a Kill. Christopher Walken is an amazing actor, but they both feel he's wasted in this role.
He is, but he isn't. He does give a great, yeah, to your depth, Mr. Bond. But I think it's like he's
fucking fantastic. I love that guy. And I said, okay, well, I wanted to say one thing. I recently did my review of Brainstorm for Vintage Cable Box, and I was talking about how great he is. And the thing, okay, this is the quality about Walken that I've recognized over the years. When he's performing, you never know what he's thinking. That is why
he's
he's
that unpredictable thing with the eyes too.
Yeah, you don't know what what's going on in his head. And that's the mark of a good actor. A good actor never lets you in, never lets you know quite what they're thinking, and that's how you figure it out.
I heard that originally they wanted Zorin to be played by David Bowie.
Oh, that'd be
interesting. And that would have been interesting. And that was during his sort of, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence sort of actor
his
years.
Let's Dance period, yeah.
He was...
Let's dance.
And so that would have been interesting, but he's probably...
Put on your red shoes and dance, the blues.
Yeah. He probably looked at the script and went, no. It'd be my...
I love the final. I always remember the final scene where Grace Jones kills them both.
Yeah.
And he says, Mayday.
Yeah.
and then
she blows up.
There's a big explosion. They also point out the central flaw of Walken's plan, killing off his customers, apparently.
Also, it's like he also says that...
Is that bad writing, or is that just a stupid...
It has to do with the fact that he's going into Silicon Valley so that they can't make chips anymore or something. Like they don't make the chips there. They just headquartered there. They don't actually make the chips there. They make them in Japan
or Malaysia or something.
Yeah, or something like that. So all they're doing is he's like destroying his own business because that's where all the infrastructure is, but that's not where they make the chips.
Well, I remember my wife liking this movie because she likes Roger Moore, of course, because it's our generation, but she also loved the song. Duran Duran.
Yeah, the first and I think only James Bond song to go to number 1.
Dance into the Fire.
Yeah. Honestly, it went to number 1 here, but only number 2 in the UK.
All right, we'll wrap up this movie by I'll ask you.
Yes.
You're the Bond nut.
Yeah.
Where does this stack up?
Like I said, like I came around on Roger Moore. It's not the worst, but it's like it can be a bad movie and you can still enjoy it. I honestly don't know. I mean, I would have to like do an actual list. It's weird. It would probably go near the bottom, but I'd still watch it because it's big, it's dumb. There's lots of laughs. There's like weird plot things where you're like, what? But it's Roger Moore, and it's just stupid. It's stupid fun, which isn't necessarily what James Bond should be, but Roger Moore James Bond can be. It's kind of like Moonraker, where it's just big, dumb, expensive.
Well, I think one of the lesser known qualities about James Bond movies that I appreciate is the humor. James Bond can be really funny
sometimes,
except for I guess that one where he got married and his wife died.
Yeah, that whole thing was a downer. And still probably one of the best ones.
All right, next up is Perfect, which is another favorite of mine. I love
a movie I have not seen, and I've probably only seen bits and pieces.
All right, well, it's basically you got John Travolta, pretty much in his prime. He's looking really good in this movie, and he's fantastic. He's a great actor. Actually, John Travolta was kind of an underappreciated actor, and another person that my wife really loves because she loves his interplay with other characters. He has a certain charisma about him in how he relates to men and how he relates to women.
He loves relating to men, from what I've heard.
From what I've heard, too. But you have, John Travolta is basically playing the part of Aaron Latham in this. Aaron Latham wrote the screenplay with James Bridges for Perfect, based on a series of articles that he wrote for Rolling Stone magazine about the health craze. the health club single scene, and so he's in the middle of this really important interview with this character who was arrested, who is based on John DeLorean. It really was John DeLorean in real life. Aaron Latham, I think he intended Perfect to be a memoir, and he got this interview with DeLorean after DeLorean's arrest. They found all the cocaine in the trunk of one of his cars or something like that. Yeah. And in the middle of all this, the magazine editor tells him, you got to try at Health Club, go and interview people and get in on this craze of what's going on. And I have to tell you, I had the original issue of Rolling Stone that's featured in the movie with Christy Brinkley on the cover. It was printed in 1983, actually. This movie came out in 85. So Travolta goes to some kind of fitness place. He strikes up relationships with all these people and gets interviews with them. And he gets friendly with Jamie Lee Curtis, and they wind up becoming a pair because they're both good looking, great bodies and everything, and all working.
Yeah, when they were showing those clips and the thing, I'm like, man, she must have gotten in shape for this. She has that aerobic body. Of course, she was. Actually pretty young then.
Back then,
you gotta say she's probably 85.
Back then, Jamie Lee Curtis,
24,
never had a problem with her body.
Yeah.
When I saw her in Trading Places, I was like, holy.
And I gotta say this because it's like he ends up and he's talking to Lorraine Newman. And the whole thing is Lorraine Newman's supposed to be ugly or something. And I'm like, yeah, she was actually kind of hot and cute.
Well, also,
adorable.
Siskel says that Lorraine Newman looked like she put on weight.
I know that was
which
like
I think
weird,
it's a fucked up thing to say. Why would he say
she
that?
That's kind of skinny, I guess, and kind of small on SNL. I guess I don't know.
I guess I don't know
in a compliment way, but it did come across as this weird backhanded compliment.
It seemed like that.
Yeah.
Now, I liked some things about Perfect. I thought its criticism of snotty cultural reporting made some sense. But I wish there had been many more scenes between Travolta and Curtis. Their relationship is kept in the film on a very superficial level, basically he watching her exercise. And I wish that there had been more scenes involving the young women at the club. Lorraine Newman's character is very appealing, and another character that's also interesting is Mary Lou Henner's character in this film. That should have been the heart of this film, women like that working out at these clubs. My biggest disappointment of all, though, the very pat, happy-go-lucky ending that is really a disservice to everything that goes on before in this film. It just wraps everything up in a little sweet package. So a mixed review from me on Perfect. Boy, I would love to have re-edited this picture.
But what now? The movie is supposed to be more of an examination of journalistic ethics, rather than the sexy subject matter of health clubs and all that. And where he goes, I think, where Travolta's character goes over the line, because he plays a journalist, is that he's very critical and judgmental of all the people that he's interviewed, and where he seemed to have been really friendly with them, and Jamie Lee Curtis didn't like that. They break up. He goes to jail. He winds up going to jail because he refuses to name his sources for his interview with the character Mackenzie, that renamed Mackenzie for the movie, who's supposed to be DeLorean basically, and she bails him out at the end, and there's a happy ending, and they don't like the ending. That's the thing. They like the movie. They're with both Siskel and Ebert are with the movie up until the ending. They don't like the happy ending of them getting together at the end of the night.
Do you think that perhaps this movie was sort of movie make? Well, all movies are, but like movie making by community, by like committee, because you have them. They have the movie people trying to make a movie, but then you have the Rolling Stone people trying to have it not look bad to them.
Well,
or
yeah, the Rolling,
there is a tie-in. There is like a whole tie-in of like even like the poster. It looks like an issue of Rolling Stone. They have somebody from the editor of Rolling Stone. Is in
and
the
it
movie.
says special thanks at the end in the credits. They thank Rolling Stone. Jan Wenner is in the movie playing his boss, who is the editor of Rolling Stone, who has recently been accused of sexual harassment. By the way, Jan Wenner can't really. He's not much of an actor, but. I guess he really wanted to be in the movie for some reason. He wanted to act opposite John Travolta.
Maybe that was the deal. Like you can use.
But no, I didn't. I as a committee, no. I do see Rolling Stone being very well. We can't have you say this, cut this scene out, cut that scene out. But the thing is, it's very much James Bridges and Aaron Latham's movie. James Bridges is an interesting director. He directed The China Syndrome, and then he directed Urban Cowboy. And then he directed a movie called Mike's Murder with Deborah Winger. He's an interesting director because he's very. This is kind of like Urban Cowboy in a way, because it's like it's like a trend or a fad, and as a director back then, he was very curious about why people did the things they did, and why they were drawn to certain trends. So it's a very interesting. It's it's a quintessential 80s movie, and I thought it was great. It's great. It's a great popcorn movie.
Well, sometimes a movie can be good just because it's so 80s and you just enjoy it on an 80s level. I would have to see this movie to see if I actually enjoy it on a movie level or an 80s level.
I think you'll like it. You'll like it. You'll laugh immediately because there's a scene right before the credits start where Carly Simon throws a drink in John Travolta's face.
He probably had it coming.
She comes up to him. They're having dinner in a restaurant, and like he's having a dinner with Jan Winter or something, and Jan says, "Uh-oh, Carly Simon's coming over here," and he's like, "Hey, Carly, how you doing?" And she's like, "I read that shit you printed about me," and then throws a drink in his face, and then the credits roll.
A commercial or a trailer or something.
It's pretty cool. I think it was a Bloody Mary too. Ooh. It's not the easiest drink to get out of your suit. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. They seem to really like the movie, except for the ending, some of the edits. Next up is Goodbye New York from 1985, an Israeli-American comedy drama produced, directed, and written by Amos Kolek, who also co-stars in his directorial debut. I took that from the Wikipedia. We have Julie Hagerty.
Yes.
This is kind of like a screwball comedy, and I remember seeing it on cable.
I don't think I've seen this movie. I do not think I've seen this movie.
It's a movie. It's one of these things that probably barely got a release here. So they showed it a million times on cable television, and I like Julie Hagerty. She's one of my favorite actresses, actually, because she's one of the few actresses of the time, like Goldie Hawn, capable of making a fool of herself.
I only remember her from like Airplane and Lost in America, which is what they reference in this episode.
Lost in America. Ooh, what a great movie. That's a great movie, too.
The core of the nest egg.
Yes. 22. So she's like this woman who learns that her husband was cheating on her, and she decides to go to Paris, and she takes too many drugs or something and too much alcohol. She oversleeps on the plane. She misses her connection and winds up in Tel Aviv with no luggage, no money. She gets into this thing called a kibbutz, which is like some kind of, it's like a gathering of people that are all together. It's kind of like what you would call a hostel in Europe or London, but instead it's a kibbutz, so it's like a commune.
Yeah, a very Jewish commune.
Well, yeah, I guess Hebrew, the chosen people, and she falls in love with people and all this stuff, and it's like she sets up a life there, and she starts to really like it. It's an okay movie. It's probably not the best of this grouping of movies. But both Siskel and Ebert really don't like her voice. Ebert doesn't like her voice. Siskel doesn't like the story. They say it's populated with interesting characters, but a really dumb plot.
Well, I have no opinion on it because I've never seen it.
New Yorker finds herself broken home with these.
Come with me. You will be my wife.
No, I'm married, thank you.
You married?
Yes, I am married.
Sex is out of the question, huh?
You betcha, buddy boy. Take this thing back.
Here.
Goodbye, New York, and it stars Julie Hagerty, who also starred in Airplane and Lost in America, as a New Yorker who is married to a drug dealer, and she finds out that he's cheating on her. That's going too far. So she hops on the next plane to Paris, oversleeps, and ends up in Israel. The rest of the movie is about how she is broke and alone and forlorn and trapped in a travelogue about Israel. Here's the scene where she arrives at the wrong airport.
Excusez-moi. Où est l'autobus pour Paris, s'il vous plaît?
Paris?
Oui?
No buses to Paris here. You might be able to get a plane, madame.
A plane? Where am I?
Ben Gurion Airport, near Tel Aviv. Madame?
Yeah, but what happened to Paris?
Paris is in France. This is Israel, the Holy Land.
Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode.
Yeah.
I don't know what I want to add to this except to say it was 1985. It was a very different time, very different climate in which look at how varied these movies are. You've got a screwball comedy, you've got aerobics and fitness, you've got James Bond, and then you've got Chevy Chase doing a goofball character like Fletch. I mean, this is fantastic.
I think we're off by a few weeks of like St. Elmo's Fire. Just by a few weeks.
Fuck
I think this
me.
came out in the summer too.
So, that not a good movie. That one. That's no. I don't understand. I don't understand that movie. Anyway, thanks for listening to Siskel and Ebert's. I'm sorry,
David and David.
What the fuck is the name of it?
It's David and David and Gene and Roger. A Siskel and Ebert podcast. And I am David Anderson, and you are David Lawler. Is that correct?
And I'm Paul Stanley and Stevie Nicks.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
So, good night.